And we're live and doing the obligatory hangout for a second to get all of our technology aligned. Little dance. Hi, everybody. I we're totally live now. Okay, great. Welcome everyone to another Tuesday with Forge, where we'll be live. My name's Emil. I use they them pronouns, and I am so happy to be here with Michael and Christina and all of y'all. You may have noticed that it's July instead of June, but here at Forge, we celebrate our lives, our identities all year round. So Pride keeps on going, even past the month of June. And today we want to talk about pride in community and, knowing that there's official Pride Month, but then there's the pride that we have in ourselves, in our communities, in our lives, in this world all year round. And how important building community and connection can be for folks. And I'll just start this with saying, I know that for myself and a lot of other people, this week has been yet another rough week in months, if not years, of rough days and rough weeks. And with everything that's happening in the world, from attacks on our democracy to attacks on trans lives, attacks on people who have to sleep outside sometimes, continuing genocide, all of that, like we need each other. And it can be really, really hard to find connection when we're overwhelmed and exhausted and tired. So that I'm glad we're having this conversation today, because of just how resonant everything going on is, and yeah, like I said, just how much we need to connect, but how hard it can be. So with that kind of framework in mind, we want to start with just a really broad question of what are your thoughts on building community? Why is community important? How is it connected to pride for you? That's really generally thoughts on building community. Michael, do you want to get us started?
I think I do, because I think like one of the things that I've thought about is very similar to what you just kind of framed and how you framed it, which is that the world is really hard right now. And we know that trans and non-binary people have higher rates of depression and anxiety and suicidal thoughts and attempts and all of those things because the world is hard and because of lots of things. And I think because of all of what's going on in the world and because of, the impact of minority stress and microaggressions and all of those things, it's really vital that we have community, and whatever that community means to us, it's really important that we have and maintain community for ourselves and for each other. And we can support each other in our various identities and experiences and realities. And, this can mean acknowledging that the world is hard, or it can mean uplifting successes. It can mean lots of different things for like how we are there for each other. But, for me, part of this topic is really about how we can be there for our friends, our partners, our coworkers, our, people that are in our lives, and how we can take time to listen to people. Like, I think sometimes when we think about pride, we think about the celebratory loudness. And when I think about pride, it can also be about that quietness, that being present for each other, about that one-on-one connection or small group connection, as well as that big, kind of not over the top, but big and loud and boisterous pride-like things. So that was where your lead-in kind of led me to, was those pieces. Were those pieces?
Thank
Christina?
you.
And for me, I feel like sometimes life in rural areas, like where I live, can be kind of isolating. And Pride Month is great because Pride is everywhere. Like Michael said, it is loud, it's boisterous, and it can be a lot of fun, but then it leaves us feeling a little bit empty the other 11 months of the year when we don't have a lot of support out here. So I find taking pride beyond June and finding my little clusters of people and celebrating together our milestones, whether it be our HRT anniversaries or, when we first started socially transitioning. There are so many ways that we can celebrate and take pride in one another and ourselves that aren't always centered around June.
Yeah, I love those. Both of you highlighted different opportunities to connect, and you're really thinking about what you just said, Christina. There's so many in U.S. culture. Like, there's only a few allowed kind of milestones to really like call all your people together and celebrate. And it's like, not all of us are going to have those milestones or want those milestones. But if we want the party or we want the gift cards, like, let's celebrate other things. Let's celebrate the stuff that's important and meaningful in our lives. For, whether it's an anniversary or, being excited about something, maybe it's the day you started therapy or graduate therapy, or whatever it is. Those things can be celebrations too.
I was thinking too that there's Christina, you made great, a suggestion of like, those anniversary dates that we can celebrate with the people that know about those or that we want to share about those. And I was like looking at social media this morning, and I was seeing all of these things about Disability Pride month. And I don't know if it's July or June, but I think it's July. And I was thinking about, like, there are so many dates now. I mean, we have like a pronoun awareness day. We've got pan or pansexual or pangender days. We've got arrow, we've got ace, we've got bi, we've got, all of these different ways and days and months that we can celebrate pride in different ways. So like we can connect our identities and other people's identities and be, feel that level of pride around many different types of things, not just being trans or queer.
Absolutely. And you're thinking about, like, it is July is Disability Pride Month. I really want to honor like how much I have learned from disability communities and disability justice work over the years, particularly around the idea of interdependence. I definitely grew up in like a culture and society that really values independence and like doing it yourself and being capable and tough and like all of this stuff, where it's like really looking at the individual, and not seeking support from other people. And like, not only is that just like super impractical, but like it's fake. I don't know a single person who doesn't need other people, whether it's because other people help us grow our food or build houses or know how to fix the electricity, or like, there's so many things in our lives that we just literally don't do everything for ourselves ever. And that's great and beautiful. And then really looking at, more into this concept, it's like learning to value the fact that we need each other, and that we take care of each other, and really like shifting away from, that it's a burden to need somebody, to it's a gift, it's a part of our lives, or it's value neutral, whichever that is. And that kind of leads into thinking about, a lot of the work we do at Forge around trauma and experiences of violence and healing. The like thing that always comes up when you talk about healing from trauma is connection. And the thing that always comes up when you talk about changing the world or activism or making the world a better place is connection and community. And so whether, in big or small ways, like, we need each other, and connection can be really hard and difficult and painful and can cause us a lot of hurt, but it also is something that like helps us heal, when we find connection that is right for us, and supportive and valuable. So I think that's like, the big picture of, for me, of like community and connection. Um, I'll pause and see if either of y'all want to add more on that thread before I switch gears.
Christina, do
No,
you
I
want
love what you said, because I love what you said, Emil, because I do learn so much from intersectionality, LGBT people that are involved in other movements that I might not be so aware of, because that really does show just how varied our community is. It helps us build connections and groups other than ourselves and take that community even further.
When I was thinking, Emil, when you were talking about it, and I totally agree about the need for connection, and it kind of just keeps on coming back to connection and community. And when I think of the word community, I don't necessarily think about the trans community first. And I think it's important for all of us to recognize that, like, even if we're trans, that's not necessarily our primary or central community. Not that we have to hierarchy which communities we belong to, but community can mean different things to different people. And if we're really interested in what's going on in certain parts of the country, that might be our community orientation, or so it's just like paying attention to what and where we are, and what and where our friends are, and how many different communities kind of overlap each other, and they're all good, to have those connections to each of those communities. And maybe it's one big community, or maybe it's 10 different communities that people feel an allegiance to, a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we dig in a little bit to the idea of, like, well, how do you find community? How do you build community and connection? Um, thinking in that broad sense of, like, community means a lot of different things. Maybe it's family in the various ways we mean family, friends, neighbors, artists, folks in our field of work. What are some of the ways we can build community? Asked of a bunch of introverts.
Well, yeah, asking that of an introvert that's funny too, because I am absolutely that. I'm a homebody. I don't like to leave my house. I have all of the different ecosystems I need out here. I love my gardens and what they bring to me. So I reach out a lot through social media. I rely on my statewide LGBT groups. There's a county one that I belong in. There are ways of finding friends and community members online that are feeling just as isolated out here as we are. And I think the internet has become such a great tool for connecting introverts that way.
Absolutely.
Christina, when you say that, I was thinking about, like, how, yes, we have three introverts here, but I was thinking about, some people that are in my life who use Second Life, which is this online platform that I don't know very much about, but they create their communities on Second Life, and they may not know each other, but they can build rooms and worlds, and and similar to other gaming platforms, of like being able to build things. And it's like, again, we don't have to have community being in person or about being trans. We can have it be about whatever it is that we want, that we feel passionate about. So I think about other people too, that, like, they play Wordle every day and they post their scores on social media, and it's like that to them feels like a community, because they're all doing same thing and they're sharing that. So it's like, what is that common connection that people have, that brings them joy, brings them passion?
I appreciate that. One of the things I was thinking about is just, like, finding ways to be ourselves. And to some extent, this is like, feels like kind of obvious advice if you've ever read a, like, How to Make Friends Over the Age of 30, blog, of which there are about 1 billion. I've read a lot of them. You know, it's like, well, do the things that you love, like engage in your hobbies and you'll find other people. And I remember like 5 years ago, I was talking to a friend about how to make friends here, and they were like, you know, do that. And I was like, right. And I'm going to go around a bunch of strangers who are going to misgender me, and it's going to suck. And at the same time, I think like the ways that we can find to really be authentically ourselves as soon as it feels safe for us can really help with that connection. Because it's like, I'm not going to have to like make friends with somebody and then find out if we agree about like who has the right to exist on this planet or not. I want to be really upfront about that value. And that helps, like, I feel more myself. And I'm better able to engage with people when I don't feel like I'm hiding. And there are times, you know, like all of that is said with full awareness that there are times I have to hide, there are times everybody has to, you know, keep parts of ourselves close that feel that way. But a way, you know, finding ways to feel like we're still being genuinely who we are, even if we're not open about all aspects of our lives, like, can be really beneficial in this. And I think part of that for me has also been over the years, like recognizing that not everybody has to be all things to all people. Like, I'm going to have best friends, I'm going to have acquaintances, I'm going to have the people I see a couple times a year, or the people I can say like show up at this thing with me, who are different than the like take me to my doctor's appointment people. And that's okay. And sometimes, and being open to that, like being fluid and changing, because sometimes the people who are like the twice a year people are the ones who also bring you a casserole when you really need it. And so just like, yeah, that kind of openness of figuring out how to be genuinely myself, and also like see people for who they are and where they're at, and let those things change, has been really helpful to me.
You know, I was thinking a lot about this before we went live, about how, you know, where can we be genuine, or where can is a word that I don't really like, but it's building off of what you just said about, you know, where can we be who we are. And, you know, I think so often in our community, there's a lot of pressure to be out as whatever, out as trans, out as non-binary, out as, you know, owning our history in a certain way versus another way. And, you know, I think there's a lot of pressure sometimes within our community to be a certain way. And, you know, I think sometimes some of us find that we can be more of our authentic self when we're involved with like a puppy community, and I mean like human puppies, or with BDSM communities, or maybe with furries. And I know I've just named a couple things that are about fur, but, you know, like that might feel like the most authentic places for us, not because we do or don't want to be out, but that might feel the most safe for us, or the most intimate, or the most connected to who we are, rather than having that transcentric identity. So I think that like it would be really beautiful if we could, you know, I mean, it's great to have trans people in those circles, but we don't necessarily have to have trans people in the communities that we find the most joy or value in, or where we can be the most authentic.
No, that's a great point. And I love that recently I have come into a group of people online that are local, and it's just LGBT people who enjoy fishing. You know, it's not your typical trans-centered space. It's I love getting out in nature. I'm catch and release because I don't want all the mess, especially, but also it's anyway, I'm not going to get into all of that. But it's a group of LGBT people who don't talk about being LGBT. We talk about the fish we catch and the bait we use and our fishing gear. And it's great that we can be authentic and engage in this hobby and feel safe doing so without the pressure of coming out.
So I think kind of like circling us back, you know, we look at these different communities we can be a part of, fishing, furries. You know, I was thinking of like Bookstagram, where people just like post on Instagram about all the books they read. That's my like weird community. How can those connect back on this theme of like healing and survival and all of that? Anybody want to connect the dots for us or give an example?
Well, I think we use hobbies as healing all the time. I think it's the way we kind of recenter ourselves and feed ourselves the things we need. And when we are able to do so in a group of like-minded people, community healing is all the better, in my opinion. I love to just be around a group of people who are able to let their guard down and just heal together.
Yeah,
Emil, do you want to answer your own question?
I can. I love what Christina just said. You know, thinking about a lot of different things, like with hobbies in particular. Sorry, this is going to be a journey. We'll all go on it together, hopefully. I have a note to myself to talk about like how much capitalism makes it hard to build connection, because we all of these reasons. There's structures in the world that like keep us constantly needing to spend our time and energy just to like trying to survive, and making it harder and harder to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And those systems teach us that it's like it's our fault if we don't have whatever enough money is, if we, you know, aren't the best, if we don't quote succeed, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
And those systems also teach us like, well, the way you do that is, you know, like make money off of all your hobbies, like turn everything into capitalism. And that really hurts the healing that like Christina just talked about. And it's like you got to do what you got to do to survive. And we can really acknowledge that the way this world is structured is harmful to our survival. And we're figuring out how to deal with it. But you know, thinking about, I named Bookstagram. So like Bookstagram is like book Instagram. And it's a place where there's been, at least that I've seen, a lot of conversations about like, what are we doing this for? We love books. But then people are like, oh, I have to like read all the time and make pretty pictures in order to make money. And that's the only way I can do this. But I started because I wanted to make friends. And then there's also like, you can kind of like watch these beautiful friendships and relationships build, and like amazing thoughtfulness about books. Y'all, I love books. And so it's like, I think it just kind of speaks to a lot of those different layers of like what our communities are struggling with. And the piece that circles back to healing for me is also like getting to see other people who are dealing with some of the same stuff. And often it can feel like I'm the first one to ever have this feeling or this thought. Oh my gosh, like I'm so alone, or, you know, maybe I'm so innovative. And it's like, there's a lot of other people who are like going through the same, like, how do we do this negotiation all of the time? And I think that seeing what other people have gone through, what they're thinking about, can be really helpful. Like, I don't have to come up with all my own ideas. Like, other people have great ideas, and I listen and learn and share. And like get those reminders from other people to like not be so hard on myself and not be so hard on other people, because a lot of the struggles we have are, you know, like we're not to blame. We can take responsibility for making change, but like we're not to blame for it existing in the first place.
I think that is pretty great. And, you know, I just have to remind myself pretty often not to beat myself up for the tendency to want to turn every hobby into a side hustle, because societal pressure is strong. And it takes time to unlearn these behaviors that have been taught to us for, well, ever under capitalism.
Yeah.
I wanted Emil to go back to your original question, and I don't think that was a very long, winding road. I mean, you said it was going to be like a long story or like a long journey, and it was not. So it was very concise. But my take on kind of like how is community healing, or what is the relationship between that? Again, I think I first want to say that community is as little or as big as we want it to be. As useful as it is for us. We don't always have to have big communities that are like, hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people. Sometimes our communities are one person or two people, or the people that we feel really close to. And, I think that for me, where the connection is that there's oftentimes joy, there's curiosity, there's safety enough to be curious, which sometimes leads us down new healing paths, or new experiences that make us feel different ways that we haven't felt before. And that can be really, really, really healing. I also think that community can be filled with love. And I know some people really love talking about love, and some people are like, oh, that's too mushy, squishy, whatever. But feeling love can really, really counteract some of the tough feelings that come with being a trauma survivor or experiencing the hardness of the world. So experiencing that love in relationships and community can be really, really vital, I think, for healing. And I think, Emil, you said it, and Christina, you said it too, but that like kind of the validation that comes from within community, whether it's like, oh, we share this identity, or, oh, I can share this and it's okay to share this. Sometimes that's just a really powerful way to get that, like, okay, I get you. I see you. I feel you. It's okay to be you here. And sometimes it's not all we need to heal, but that's like a really good foundation to have somebody say, I believe you and I see you exactly who you are.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's great. And so, my surprise question for all of us is like, well, what are some ways people can let that in, right? Like, another thing that we know about trauma is that it really can impact our ability to trust other people, and like whether to believe them. And even outside of trauma, like so many of us have just been taught throughout our lives that like compliments come with strings, or not to trust people, to be hard on ourselves, things like that. So what are some ways that people can kind of tell that like when someone says I believe you, they mean it, or like when someone's showing love, it's real?
I think one of the ways that I've done it is that I've been very intentional in surrounding myself with authentic people that show me time and time again, and that have been patient with me because they know that I'm wounded. That they're showing me through their actions time and time again that they can be trusted, that I am loved. That, and a combination of just regularly reminding myself that I am worthy of love. Because when you face a lot of trauma, sometimes that is just torn away from us, and it takes us time to kind of claw that back.
And Christina, I think that, you mentioned kind of the repetitiveness of somebody being there again and again, or saying it again and again. Sometimes for trauma survivors, that is like absolutely essential, right? We might not believe it the first time or the second time when somebody says, I believe you, but when they keep coming back, when they stay engaged, it's like, oh yeah, maybe I can believe that this person believes me or validates me. But I was thinking, Emil, to your surprise question, thank you for the surprise question, that I think that, for me, in terms of like how I encourage folks to let that happen, let me in or let other people in, is really, it's a one person at a time thing. It's a a being present. And that can mean a lot of different things to different people. Like I know a lot of trauma survivors don't like eye contact or physical contact, but if I am willing as a person to make eye contact, does that say to somebody else that I really believe them and that I really see them? If I put my phone down or put my phone in another room, does that say to them, I am 100% with you right now, and I'm here for you? They can choose to trust that or not trust that.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some behavioral things that I think, it's not like a checklist or whatever, but really helping people see that I am 100% there behind them. I'm listening. I'm caring. I'm trying to respond to them in a ways that they want to be responded to, not in ways that I want to be responded to or somebody else does, but like really listening to what they want and need. Those are some of the ways that I think that people can start to let that in. And sometimes it takes years and years and years for people. Sometimes it doesn't take that long, but being persistent is really important. Emil, what's your answer to your question?
I mean, it varies obviously so much. One thing I was thinking of is sort of like fact checking our brains. And I've done this in various ways, and there are other ways people do it, but like for me, sometimes it's been shifting from like, oh, you don't actually want to hang out with me, to saying, oh, I'm feeling like you don't want to hang out with me. What is going on here? How are you feeling? And like, rather than assigning feelings, asking the person what's going on and naming my perception. And that's been really helpful, whether it's about like, do you want to be my friend, or like, do you think my house is too messy? This is a common one. I deal with a lot of feelings about people helping me clean my house, and I need help because of disabilities. And so that's been really useful to like just reframe the question, and that's sort of like fact checking my brain. My brain is saying, this is what this person thinks, but like, I don't get to decide that for them. That's not what I do. And then other fact checks are sometimes like, there are times where, maybe I'm feeling like lonely or sad, and I'm like, no one ever calls me. I was like, Emil, look at your recent call log. Who did you call last? When did you last place a phone call? And when did somebody last call you? And I bet, somebody called me more recently than I called them. Or like, they never text me. Yes, they did. And sometimes I find out, oh, I am always initiating the texts, and that's not feeling great. So like, my fact check was like, yeah, you're right to feel that this is weird. Now you can talk about it. So I think that's been helpful. And people do it in a lot of different ways. Like, maybe it's telling a friend what happened, and being like, is this normal? Does this feel like a red flag, a green flag? Does this, like, let's get some backup here, or like, help me remember this thing that happened. And that can be really helpful also if somebody is showing signs that they're like not trustworthy, or might be potentially like harmful or abusive. Getting that, like, that other perspective can help counter some of the gaslighting. So it's both like, can be affirming sometimes, and affirming that they are on the positive side, and affirming if it's like, oh, there's warning signs here. And it doesn't need to be done in isolation. If your friend says, oh, that seems fine, but you don't feel fine about it, like, you don't have to take your friend's advice. But I just find like adding some of those tools in the mix can be really helpful too.
And
one of the things that you said, and maybe this is, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Christina.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. We talked over each other.
Okay.
You sure? One of the things that I was hearing Emil, was that, I'm sorry, we're having this like talk over each other thing. Emil, when you mentioned, you could have mentioned, house and having people in, and I think that's something that a lot of us feel, but it made me think about how many trauma survivors have shame about things. I'm not saying that you have shame about anything, but like that, I think is one of the things that really impacts people letting each other in. Like if you literally won't let people in your house because you're ashamed of how it looks or ashamed about whatever. I mean, I think it literally shuts the door on letting people in when there might be shame about that. So a house is just one example, but there are so many things that trauma survivors feel shame about that, I'm not going to say if they're rational or not rational, but people have shame about stuff. And it's a roadblock a lot of times for letting people in. So, I don't have any answers to that, but it's like, I think that's just important to name sometimes, that people have shame, and how can we, as the person that holds shame, or the other people that we know who hold shame, how do we help walk through that in ways that don't cause more harm? And that's a rhetorical question. Okay. Sorry, Christina.
Oh, no, that's fine. I apologize for talking over you. I'm on a learning curve with this stuff. I'm not so great at it just yet. I'll get there. But one of the things that I've found over time is that communicating my fears, my concerns, my anxieties with the people that I am letting into my life, it can let them know how to better love me. And not only that, but it can open the door for them to let their guard down and to share their insecurities, their worries. And I've found this common ground with a few people, and it's wonderful because we've become mental health buddies. We never know what the other person's thinking until we open that line of communication, and that in itself can be so healing, or at least it has been for me.
Yeah. Absolutely. Beautifully put. Yeah, I'm just taking a minute to like think through that and see what other questions. And Michael, do you have more?
The one thing that I've thought about multiple times in this conversation is, when we're talking about building community and pride throughout the year, and all of the concepts that we've talked about today, I keep on thinking about, like, Emil, you mentioned something like, there are different kind of people that do different things in your life, not do, but like, are in different places in your life. And I was thinking, like, in my life, I've got people that I've never met in person who I consider pretty close to me, and they're part of my community. Or there are people that I only have contact with like twice a year, but I've known them since I was in high school. There are people that I've just met. Like, I think that we can frame things and look at things of like, we don't have to see somebody every day or talk to them or text them every day. And they can be really close to us. They can be really meaningful to us. I mean, we can be really real with them. And I think it's important for us to not get like caught up in some of the, I guess, the social narrative of like, this is what it means to be community. This is what it means to be in a friendship with somebody. Because we can all define that however we want to define that, whether it's I only talk to somebody once a year, or I see them at the National Sexual Assault Conference once a year, and I get to hug them, and we feel really great. And then we don't see each other for another year. It's like, that's immunity too, not just that ongoing piece. At least that's my take on community.
Absolutely. And I've been thinking a lot too about like community long term, and as we like are existing in a really like uncertain and overwhelming world. I like my like broader community is talking about like climate justice and climate change, and thinking about like, how do we take care of each other? What skills do we want to have? And like, or, when we look at like pod mapping as a tool around accountability and ending violence, like, If we're talking about like going to protest, you know, it's like find a friend and here's how to like form an affinity group and all of this stuff. Like community comes up with basically like whatever we care about. And like however we envision moving towards the future, in so many different ways, you know, and and just like how important that can be. And so it can feel like, you know, sometimes like a, oh crap, I have to do this thing in order to like get through to the next stuff, but kind of taking that pressure off and saying like, this is valuable. I get to go slow and at my own pace, or I get to be like, no, I'm going to do this right now. I'm going to like jump into trying a bunch of different ways, whatever's right for you. I've said that a lot. Hopefully folks got that message, but you know, it really does matter to so many different issues. And I think that like, you know, when we talk about being trans, like both of y'all have said, like, we're not just trans. We're also like, you know, gaming nerds or climate justice activists or like, you know, gardeners or like all of this different stuff, and making sure that we're really connected on those things. I know it just feels, yeah, it feels important to figure out. All right, and I'm looking. I know we're talking about community today, and it doesn't seem like we've gotten many comments to highlight, but I do want to say this is, if you're watching this as a recording later on, feel free to like add in your thoughts on community. Christina, you know, being like our big personality who's on social media more than Michael and I, has really talked to us a lot and really introduced us like, this is a way that we build community too, is through these online connections. And so I want to say to anyone who's watching this later, like, we value your insights and input. We want to hear from you, how you build community, like what more, you know, we can offer as part of your community. What do you want to see from Forge in the future, so we can keep developing, you know, these spaces to share, and providing that support.
Can I just say how funny it is that our big social media personality is an absolute introvert who is happiest when she's just covered in mud and playing in the dirt? Because, you know, my community, I like to keep a small community. I can't keep track of a lot of people. It hurts my head and confuses me, and then I get sad, and then I push everyone away. So, you know, there's my small community. It's 5 or 6 friends, and then there's the bigger community we exist in, and then there's the bigger community that exists in. And there are so many layers to community. There's no wrong way to do community. You're doing it perfectly the way you are.
Kind of like you're doing community perfectly, kind of like gardening, you know, like there's so many different ways. It doesn't have to be beautiful. It can be, you know, messy. It can be like weeds, which are often just like beautiful flowers that for some reason people cut down. Okay, go ahead, Michael.
Someone told me that weed is nothing more than a plant that one person finds undesirable in their garden. If you think it's pretty,
now I have new thoughts. The two of you know this, but like my mother, who's no longer on this planet, hated coneflowers, any kind of coneflowers. So that's exactly what I planted next to my window. You know, it's like, so sometimes we just, you know, hey, we don't like certain things, you know, and whatever. And now we just like embrace them or whatever. And you know, Christina, I was thinking about, you know, you know, we know that you're an introvert, and you've now said it multiple times publicly, but you have a big persona sometimes. And I was thinking that like that is a really cool part about community, is that we can either literally put on a costume and be part of a community and then go back to our small, you know, more intimate community. Like it's fun sometimes to do that. And I know sometimes some of us feel like a little bit of a longing for like, why is everybody else having a good time in this big, public space? And, I really want to go. And then when I go, I feel really isolated. So it's like, I think that it's important to acknowledge that sometimes of like, sometimes it looks really rosy at those big things. And then when we get there, it's like, no, it really doesn't fit me. So like just kind of honoring all of that. And then also trying things on for size. Like, what would it be like if we did that big, loud thing and we decided to be big and loud for 2 hours? Like, that's kind of fun to just try that hat on. And then we go back home and we shut the door and we, be by ourselves for 5 hours and then we're good. So, I mean, again,
that is something that I hope everyone will take to heart, because behind every 2-minute video of me being loud and boisterous and funny and doing really weird stuff, there's a solid 7 hours of rest. Because it's exhausting to be an introvert that masks so well.
Yeah.
Can we find a way to end on maybe, not that that's not a positive note, but Emil, you're the question asker for the day. How do you want to wrap up today? So yeah, they're like, oh,
I have an idea of how to wrap up.
Maybe each of us could say, maybe what is one thing that's really important to us about community? It can be about our own community or about community in general.
Yeah,
How's that for
Mm-hmm.
Did you say, do I want to start?
Mm-hmm.
I think community is really healing and community is really individual. That was a simple statement.
Yeah.
Christina, you're next. Ha.
I think community can be overwhelming and community can be amazing.
I think, community can be amazing. I think like starting small and noticing what's there and what exists, and finding ways to value that, and having community with your pets that bark at the end of things.
Yes.
And mine will start too, because she just got up because she heard yours. And yes, that is part of community.
Our non-human friends are in community with each other, and we're in community with all of y'all. So please send us thoughts and questions. Stay tuned for more from us live. We've got some more trainings and stuff that are more structured coming up, and we're just excited to keep talking with people.
Thanks everybody for being here and listening. Thanks for moderating the meal.
Thank you all.
Thanks everybody. Bye.